Say what you will about Destiny 1, but you've probably already talked your tongue off enough already about it. Whether it be abuse or adoration, everyone has their own opinion on Destiny 1, and it seemed like back in the day, that was on the top of everyone's agenda, to extol it as much as possible. But now we can finally stop all that faffing nonsense, because it's sequel time, baby. And I was cautiously optimistic about Destiny. The major question I had was, in this world of downloadable expansions, what Destiny was going to do to fit the sequel description, and how Bungie's idea of a sequel would resemble my own. Because Bungie's idea leading up to launch seemed to be, well, this one has a story, which raised my other big question, is that it then? Say what you will about Destiny, but not having a story was only one of the problems in the wriggling mound of problems. The dearth of content leading to a cripplingly dull mid-game grind to try and appease a loot system that hated you and all of your opinions, perhaps the biggest and wriggliest. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, because before we can learn about anything about that, we have to go through this so-called fabled story experience. Basically, the tower, the social hub from the first game, gets blown to shit by Gaul, primary antagonist of the Legend of Spyro, the Eternal Knight. Here reimagined as a grunt from Halo, hitting the protein shakes in the Progeria, all up in the throne of the Cabal, one of the factions who got severely little screen time in the first Destiny. He's all mad because the Traveler chose to funnel its light into us, Guardians, so he storms the tower, literally, basically pulling a Metroid on all the Guardians by stealing our powers before booting us off the side of the tower, leaving us helpless and reaved of our light. But I'll spoil right now that we regain our powers because of some Chosen One thing, us, the Chosen One, us and the 50,000 other Chosen Ones. And we must start working our way back up to in turn boot Gaul off the tower. And to be honest, that little summary I just gave pretty much sums up the story. There's not a whole lot of depth here. It's not some revolutionary tale in the sci-fi canon. It falls back on tropes and whatnot. But for this sort of deal, it's actually kind of fine. Certainly makes better than Destiny. Back in that day, building context was pretty much just, hey, you know those guys you've been shooting at? They are bad. And this guy's king bad, go kick his ass. Not even fries on the side. Well, this game is like, yes, this guy's a bastard because he ground all our stuff into a snortable powder and kicked us off a tower. The player has a reason to be mad at him, which makes the whole affair feel less banal and, well, more ass-kicking. The story's got some quibbles, though. I think the tone's a bit all over the place. A world without light prompts the early tagline. It seems like every NPC tries to be a comedy relief character, trying to fill the role of sarcastic weed and wit. Even returning characters like the Ghost and the Speaker get a few rap battle clapbacks. And the only NPCs that really seem important are Zavala, Ikora, and Cade, the original 3 from the first game. So everyone else just doesn't really feel like a part of the story. They're just there to throw a few funny, hilarious lines in there. Certainly it doesn't help that their attempts at friendly conversation with each other just ends up being just awkward and the most hashtag cringe thing your ears have ever laid ears on. It's when Cade is promoting poultry to Colonel, you start to wonder what kind of mood you're supposed to be taking away from Destiny. Yeah, no one likes you when you're being serious, Destiny, but it's our job to make things lighter as a community. When you try, it's just weird, like a parent trying to get in on the trick-or-treating. Or at least pick a different mode of comedy. Learn all you want, but another big issue about the game's story is how very little the Guardian seems to even be involved. The majority of the cutscenes play out with them completely in absentia. Hell, the first shot of the game is of Cade strolling up, and that just says it all, doesn't it? It's a story involving the main NPCs, the Guardian pretty much just acting as the embodiment of their whims. Granted, we didn't have anything interesting to say before, and I guess it's helping the whole projection thing. But I feel like Destiny would be a natural fit for a Saints Row style of protagonist. Someone we spruce up and make our own, but the game gives agency to, and it can surprise us. The game is also in severe need of a codex, because the plot audibly punts all of the whole dense lore Destiny's known for out the window. And I might be appreciative of that, because it is sort of nebulous and intricate, but at the same time, when we're going up against this raid boss, there's this whole backstory to him, why he's living in basically Arabian Nights, and that's just not in the game. Well, I guess that kind of takes care of the story then. It's pretty simple, so let's move on to what the real question is. How the gameplay feels compared to Destiny and why it needs the roomy sequel box. So the gameplay is quite similar, obviously, but that's not actually a bad thing, because gameplay was the single rose petal atop Destiny 1's Molten of Mulch. And all the runny, jumpy, slidey, shooty gunplay is as tight as ever, perhaps even slicker thanks to the removed sprint cooldown penalty. And overall, shooting is tight and satisfying as it has always been. There are only 2 real major tweaks to the formula, the first thing being the weapon system, which I'm not too down on, but does have some issues. Rather than primary, secondary, and heavy from the first game, you have kinetic, energy, and power. Kinetic is pretty much just all the standard firearms like submachine guns, hand cannons, scout rifles, etc., etc. Energy are pretty much all of those, but with an elemental buff, and everything else is in the power drawer, from the shotguns to fusion rifles to rocket and grenade launchers, and it can be kind of frustrating having to compare a lot. But when the new infusion system hits is where the real issues arise. Because in Destiny 1, as long as a weapon was in the same slot, you can make them to birth that higher level gun. But now to buff up a scout rifle, you need another scout rifle, and so on. which makes it fusing more annoying because you're holding on to a lower tier scout rifle that may or may not ever see itself off the bench again, but specifically for power because you need to cram so many weapons into 9 individual spaces. The second, I hesitate to say major tweak, is that every class now has its own unique ability. Titans can build a wall, political commenters making jokes now. Warlocks can make pools of violence to boost damage or healing to mend it, and hunters get a dodge. Alright, I thought. Makes sense enough. They're trying to make the class separations more apparent while adding fun moves that can work well in cooperation to an extent. Alright, I'm down. Until the new supers came out, and now all of them are about use these to kill a bunch of dudes. Now, I get that in Dest 1's late game, you'd have to pick a certain subclass or be shot at dawn, but it does raise the question Bungie has continually failed to answer. Why even bother with the arbitrary class segregation when they all function for the same purpose? Personal preference? Maybe, but if that's the case, it just makes sense to me to have one base character that can be more intricately customized. New class abilities add some twists, but they're mostly just tasks on the handlebars of each character. To digress a moment, hunters in particular seem kinda screwed. The dodge has the same cooldown as the other moves, which isn't horrible, but it provides about as much invincibility as streaking across 10 yards of a football field, so it definitely feels wonky. All of the subclasses are either completely unchanged from Destiny 2, oh wait, Golden Gun can shoot 6 times now, but it lasts like half the length, oh boy. And the new super just feels a clunky word, so I guess supposed to feel nimble? You can slam multiple times in a single fist of havoc. Golden Gun is still Golden Gun. Why is the need for this racism, Bungie? That's about it for the core gameplay, but Destiny 2 does make some decent strides in the context for that direct control, thanks to a lot of, alright, let's admit, legitimately intuitive tweaks that make for a much better flow. Planets are now more involving and cohesive, rather than just going, alright, now you're here for patrol, or right now you're here for a story mission. Planets exist as independent explorable spaces with lots of stuff to do within them, like dungeons called Lost Sectors to raid, chests to find, more frequent public events, even little one-off missions that can give you upgrade points or some gear. Overall, pretty nice, and Earth and Nessus are fun and cool places to explore, with a lot of cool art design and level design. And it kinda sucks that that's only half the game, though. Titan is just 2 oil rigs stapled to a natural science museum. Io is pretty much bleached desert roads to the planet. What makes this suck even more is that the one half of the planet is boring, but the other half is just reused locations. Like Io has the War Mine Vault, and Titan has the museum from Venus, or whatever that was. But you know what? You can go right off Titan or Io and go right to Earth or Nessus without even going to orbit. In fact, going to orbit is a surprising rarity. It makes everything feel more tightly knit going from one place directly to another. Good planet or bad planet though, it is very obvious that you do not have a Sparrow until you beat the game. And that would be fine, honestly would be fine, if Bungie didn't design half of the missions in the second half of the game with you running from one end of the map to the other. Like, seriously, Bungie, don't make me realize it's gone if you don't want me to use it. And this kind of rolls into my burning question, the mid-game grind. How soul-crushing is it? Not really bad, it turns out. Even up through the late 200s of power level, gear consistently drops at or above your current piece's power. Like I said, there are a lot of activities you can do, from the new Lost Sex dungeons to the weirdly boosted reliance on public events, and they all scale up as you go. But even after hitting level 20 and finishing the campaign, Destiny 2 still has new stuff to do, unlocking strikes, more crucible options, etc, etc. Another thing to help streamline the experience is, ironically, the lack of experience grinding for gear. However gear drops, it's ready for use, fresh from the oven. There's no need to scavenge garbage from the patrol environment and jam it in so it can reach its beefiest potential. You can still do dumpster diving for resources, but you just turn them into the planet's local vendor for their XP. But that goes towards getting a legendary engram that scales to your level. Even subclass XP has gone walkabouts, replaced with simple upgrade points that slot into 2 branches you can switch between. All of this goes to making a much leaner experience geared towards one thing: gear. Acquiring gear. And it certainly makes Destiny 2 a nicer game with less of a time commitment. Hell, I got to 215 power without even touching a strike. But I actually like that since there's no reason to do strikes before the mid-game, that the game walls them off until then, but it would be nice to pick individual strikes. So the game isn't ineptly constructed though, because at that point, there's more content for you to explore. And it definitely feels more cohesive than Destiny 1, and also more respectful of the player's time. One big area I don't think the game has improved is the competitive multiplayer. I've never been much of a Crucible fan, but Destiny 2 makes my version even more pronounced. The switch to 4v4 just makes the game feel less casual, boiling it down to 2 teams hunting in packs around the map, blandly shooting at each other. The offensive abilities that feel great in PvE take too long to recharge in PvP to be more than flashes in the pan, and gameplay more often than not turns into shooting people across empty spaces. We got loads of games for that, like my favorite game, Call of Duty. I just don't feel like PvP is playing to Destiny's strengths. And Destiny 2 does have strengths, more so than Destiny 1. The experience has been improved in almost every way, so that must mean Destiny is bloody brilliant, right? It should. Shouldn't it? Then why is my hand still hovering in an sort of way? We need to dig deeper here, ladies and gentlemen. It could be that Destiny feels like it has significantly less depth than Destiny proper, having dug out all the bullshit. Not saying I want the bullshit back, having to rummage for trash for upgrades and lugging around armfuls of disparate currencies, nor am I implying that focusing specifically on the endgame goal of booty acquisition is the wrong move, because it isn't. What I am saying is that while Destiny 2 trims the fat, it hasn't added any muscle. This is the core Destiny experience, yeah, but the thing is, it doesn't feel like a distinctly Destiny 2 experience, if you feel me. I feel like this is difficult to articulate. The game is a leaner Destiny, and that's not a bad thing at all, and maybe righting all the wrongs of the original is enough, but it still feels trapped in the Destiny box, not striking out on any new ground. What Destiny 2 needed, in my opinion, was at least one more new mechanic, one new shining feature that the first game didn't have. I'm not asking for a complete paradigm shift of the shooter market, but I do feel like describing the game as Destiny without the bullshit isn't that far enough of a concept for a sequel. I guess I just wanted the comparison to Destiny 1 to shrivel up and float away. So to kind of head towards some vaguely summer-shaped sunset, Destiny 2 is good. I've been mean here, but I haven't touched another PS4 game since it came out. As far as co-op games go, Destiny 2 is a right rollicking time. It's a tougher soul for solo players, what with the whole story ending with a tepid The Adventure Continues setup. But still, if you got some friends, you could definitely do worse, and now that all the bullshit's strung out, it's actually a halfway respectable game, worth your time. You're still here? Oh, right, the raid. Now, I have some opinions on that, but that's gonna be for a later video, so stay tuned later in the week. I got some choice words for it. Alright, see you later.